Okay, so at this point I've picked my fruit. I picked this grapefruit. It has some really interesting little things going on. This little insect bite that'll be really fun. The stem part where once upon a time it was attached to the plant. Notice that this isn't really a ball shape. It's a little bit smaller here, a little bit wider here. So when I took pictures of this, because take pictures before you cut it, you want all the interesting details. You want the stem. You want to make sure you can see these indentations, because you'll want to recreate that. It's got some beautiful pink color going on here. So I took pictures of that because it's different, and it'll be fun to color match these pinks compared to this yellow and the orange going on in this grapefruit. I also took pictures of this bottom because it's got this ring going on that's very interesting. So take pictures of as many details as you need of your fruit or vegetable. Next, you're going to shape your ball. So you've seen me use the paddle, you've seen me use the hand. Does it need to be perfect at this point? No, it doesn't need to be perfect, because you're going to be handling it a lot right now. Can we fire this big ball? No, we can't fire. It's too thick. One can, if you had your own kiln and you wanted to have about 10 days, you could. We don't have that, so you have to hollow it out. How thick? About your pinky. If I'm short, so my pinky's fine. If you're taller, maybe it's your pinky nail. Look on a ruler, because you're looking, it needs to be thinner than a ½ inch. So, here's an inch, here's a ½ inch. Mine's about 3/8 of an inch. You're looking for about 3/8 of an inch. Then you can let this just sit out, because it needs to get firm. You're going to be cutting into this, and if it's fresh clay, fresh out of the bag, it's going to be too soft. I've been putting my things in the oven. I've got my oven on about 150 degrees, or just set it out. How long? I don't know. That depends. Is your house dry? Is your heater on? It'll depend. So then this goes off to the oven, comes back when it feels it's starting to feel like it has a skin on it. Now I have to decide, how do I want to cut this grapefruit? And how is it going to sit? Because remember, you can't glaze the bottom, right? So do I want it to sit on the stem? I don't recommend that. That's really interesting. Do I want it to sit up? Do I want to sit on the side? And I'm going to cut this. I think I'm going to have it sit like this. I'm going to take a little piece off of this so that just a little piece, so it's flat and it's not going to roll all over the place. Where do I want to cut it? I definitely like that pink, and I definitely like this. The pink I could choose to cut it in half. I could choose to cut a quarter, but you have to cut into it and expose the inside. I'm not going to include this stem in that, because it'll be too hard. It's too small. So if I cut it in half, it'll be really hard to recreate. So I'm just going to cut it like this. Okay. So now I'm going to recreate this, and I'm going to recreate this. Okay. So now I'm going to just take my ball of clay, make a flat place on there. I wanted this to be slightly bigger than this. Your clay is going to shrink almost 20%. So if you had something 10 inches long, it would shrink. 20% is 2 inches. So it would shrink to 8. So this is going to shrink about an inch. So it's slightly bigger. Is it perfect yet? No, you don't have to worry about perfect yet, but it's the basic shape. Now I'm going to cut into it. Remember, if it's not how you want it, it's clay. Put it back together again. Right? Okay. If this is too soft, you need to just let it hang out for a while. Can I fire this solid? No. So I'm going to have to hollow both of these things out. How do I do that? Loop tools are really nice for that. You have several. I've also used a spoon before. This is going to destroy this a little bit. And then when we're done hollowing it out, we're going to put it back together. Got my flat place on there. So you're going to take this out, save this in your bag of clay. You can reuse this for the next project. Don't throw that away. I want this edge to be about as big as my pinky or my pinky nail. I'm just going to hollow this puppy out. And this is what's going to be a hollowed out form, is what you're going to need to show me next week. So it takes a while, right? Just seeing what I've got here. I just want to show you. That's super thick. If I stuck my finger in there, my finger went in almost 2 inches. So I still have a lot to carve out. If for some reason you go through it, just patch it back up, right? You might need to make a little flap. If it's super wet, you can just use pressure. Otherwise, you're going to have to slip, score, compress, and lute. That's how you join any two things. The inside is still super wet. I was just looking for this to have a skin on it. I'm gonna pick it up and start to feel it. After a while, pay attention, because after a while you can feel, is it thick or thin? And you can see what's going on the inside of this. And you can manipulate that, like if you've gouged in some area. How do you know if it's too thick or too thin? You can take your bamboo tool or your needle tool. Now it's just gently touching my finger. That's how thick that is there. You should do it in several points around. So this is pretty good. Now I've done this before, so I'm going faster than you'll be going. And you can see how it's distorting, right? Don't worry about that right now. Your goal is just to hollow it out, and then we're going to make a flap. And then the next class, we're going to talk about recreating the texture. How do you make this different than this? How do you make that little stem? And a lot of it's by trial and error. You're going to do something really cool. If you've let this dry out and it's so hard you can't dig in here, you'll have to spray it, maybe poke some holes in it, or you could wrap it in dry plastic. I'm sorry. Take some paper towel, get it wet, wring it out, and wrap this a little bit. Okay. Check all the areas. I'm gonna heal that place. Need to heal this. I'm treating this like kittens and puppies because it's the outside's got a skin on it, but the inside does not. Okay. Now I've got it hollowed out, and I need to create a flap that's going to go here. So I can use some of this clay and just smush that. The flap needs to be about the same. You know, I'm looking for my pinky always. And it needs to be big enough to go over this, and then I'll reshape it in this V shape that I have here, okay? So I'll have to score this with your needle tool, a comb, that serrated rib, something. I love forks. I'm just gonna do fork. So slip, score, compress, and lute. Scratch that up. Scratch this up. Slip, score, compress, and lute. Now, at any point, like let's say now you have to go take care of your kids or another class or something, make sure you wrap this up in plastic, right? It'll get too dry and then you won't be able to add this patch back on. So pay attention. You're babysitting. This is your child, your kitten or your puppy. Just laying that on there. And I'm gonna cut the excess off. It's nice to have a dull knife from your kitchen. I'm not wrapping this back around because I don't want this to be too thick. But I will use compression or pressing. It's okay if a little bit gets over there. It's nice. We're going to do a little bit of luting, right? But I don't want a thick globule there. What's really important at this point, you saw me slip and score, but the compression's really important too. Why? You don't want any air bubbles. You saw me score it pretty deeply, right? So I'm gonna pat that on there, pat that on there. I'm gonna make sure it's luted. Little bits. Luting is just joining clay from one side to the other. If you've ever played with a balloon, you know that once you have it sealed everywhere, including that hole I just made there, right? I have to seal that hole or it will deflate like a balloon. So if you have any holes anywhere, get those covered up. If for some reason there's a problem and it's starting to squish, you can just make a hole and blow it up like a balloon. I'm just going to blow on that and then seal that hole. Okay. Basically got a clay balloon. Don't like it? Start again. If you're like, oh, I don't like it, spray it, stick it back in your bag, okay? Something happened to it and you're unhappy with the result. But this is what you need to have for the next class. Okay. And then we're going to talk about texture, because this has texture on it. It's not a smooth ball. How am I going to recreate that? Some of you may have a texture that you can just pull by patting it right onto yours. And it does a little bit. But I'm going to have to figure that out. I'm also going to, on the next class, we're going to talk about, you want a delineation. So I'm going to have to do some kind of impression in here, marking that, just like that. And then I'm going to have to think about how I'm going to recreate this little area. It's probably a little bit of carving. But this is called, the building method for this is called subtraction. The realism is that we're realistically reproducing our fruit or vegetable. But the building method is subtraction. Last time we did pinches, that's 1. Coils, 2. Subtraction is 3. And then the little flap is actually a soft slab. So we're doing the building method, not only a subtraction, but the soft slab. I have to do the same for this one too, right? So carve into it. I just carve into it one side. Now I think it's better to do this. Yeah. I'll carve into this until it's all the way through, pinky thin. I'll put a flap on here. Now wrap this up really well until you're ready to work on it again. Unless it needs to harden up a little bit. If it needs to harden up, just pay attention, right? Or you'll have to start again.